So, what do we need for our new pike rig? Some bicycle tubing and some matches, as well as the trace and the hooks and swivels, etc. Well, here's my setup, and here we have the bicycle tubing, and you might just about see some matches in there. Right, I don't want to use a smelly piece of fish for showing you this, so this will do. It works just the same. One loop that's around the tail for casting, and the rest of the rig involves a clip up to your swivel and then your main line. Right, so this will just aid the casting when we connect it to this piece of line here. I like to hook my baits lightly, and the thing is with single hooks that can be a bit tricky to hold the bait and not bury the single hook. You can use a double hook rig if you want. I mean, I use just a single, but you can quite easily have the trace a little further and then another single. But with this setup, what I've done here is I've worked it so the hook is in a bit of push bike inner tubing, and that holds it quite firm in any sort of direction. And the advantage of this is you're not buried it into your bait fish, and when you strike, things can move. The hook will move along, and if you strike a bit firmer, well, the whole setup, the matches and the inner tube will rip away from the fish. So at least you're not attached to the fish bait. It's quite a simple setup really. It just requires a little bit of fiddling about. But most anglers like to make up their own traces and experiment. So you could give this a go. I mean, once you're cut off a piece of inner tube, you can then just cut little strips, only about what, 6-7 millimeters wide. That's all you need. And to start with, you can cut a bit about an inch long, thereabouts. To make some holes for the matches, I'll use an old dart, and I'll just push that through, and that'll create a hole for pushing the match through. Same again, push through here. So once you've got the holes, the matches should be able to go through easily then. We just fold this inch of tubing over. We get the hook. You can use whatever hooks you like. I've got these ones, I had these quite a few years, but there is a lot of circle hooks on that now, so you could use those if you prefer. And this is a size 2. And then with this folded, you want, oh, I don't know, 2 or 3 millimeter in at least. So we place this in the middle, try not to stab it into my thumbnail. Right, push this through, round the bend a bit. The good thing about this compared to elastic bands is the inner tube is a lot firmer and a lot tighter than you would with elastic band. So there we are, we have the hook in place, so that's in there. Then all we need to do is put some matches through the holes. So all we've got to do is end up with this. Just cut the matches about. You can point them, put some points on to help them through, and this is what's going to keep in the meat of the bait and hold that on there fairly firmly, so the hook will always be out of the way. Here with a craft knife, you can just put a point on them each match. The matches are fairly tough, and the good thing about using matches, well, ecologically okay, at least you can use them plastic. And we'll just work the matches through, and they'll be held in there pretty secure. You'll be surprised how well that holds that in there. It's really pretty tough. Right, then we fit the other, push that through. Oh, there's about 2 or 3 millimeters hanging out each side. And there you can see. Now you could always sort of slice a little bit into the matches. You'd always cut into the matches a little bit, give him some little barbs, and then I'll stick into the meat of the fish bait a lot better. Now this piece of the rig is just to hold the trace in line with the hook. If we just use this, well, the trace could end up anywhere. We want the trace to be hanging back in line with the fish. So same again, you just cut off a small strip, and it is a little bit tricky getting it on the trace. So when you make your trace up, you want to make a couple of holes and then thread the trace through those holes. That is a little bit tricky, and that's surprising how much drag and grip that has. You can put up whatever distance you like, it all depends how big a bait you use. You can slide that along and fit in place, but it keeps everything in line. So you could do a double hook rig if you want, but I use singles most of the time because I don't use large baits. But some people might want to use a whole mackerel or whole herring, whatever, sardine, so they might want 2 hooks and do another hook. Now to aid casting, I just make a loop of line, nice and simple. This little old loop here will go around the toughest part of the fish. When you put this loop on, you want to put the loop through the knotted end, and then when you pull it tight, you're left with the loop, a nice clean loop this end. You don't want the knot. So when we cast, all the weight is going to be on that loop, and that'll be released when I show you another part of the rig in a moment. Right, so there we have it on there. Right, so then we get the hook with the matches. Right, you've got to pretend this is your fish, and you'll stuff the matches into the fish bait. Right, and then the little piece at the end to keep things in line, you can stab that into the tail section as well, and you just give it a pull, and there we are. We've got a nice free hook there in the open. You can twist it to the side a bit, you can have it upright, you can lay it down a bit. So this will be free to catch into the pike's jaw. We've got nothing buried in the bait, not like people use with trebles. They've got one hook and another hook, and they're embedded into the bait. The downside of having your hooks, if you had treble hooks and you have them embedded into your bait, and like mackerel was really tough old stuff, when the pike takes, it might get hooked, but the times I've seen it where you're having a scrap with the pike and that shake his head violently, and it shakes so much that the weight of the mackerel gets thrown and it takes the hooks with it. And I've seen that done. It's best if you can work it so your hooks are not embedded in your bait. So with this, the hook is free to work. I mean, you could strike and everything's gone like that. Might leave that in the bait, but the hook has gone into the pike's jaw, so everything can break away. Okay, so you have your bait and your trace, come up to your swivel, and this is your main line on the right here. Now I tie another piece of line to the swivel, just a short piece, and on the end here we have one of these little snap links. They're usually attached to a swivel, but if you just remove that little snap link off the swivel, you can tie that to the line. So what we need to do to this now is to modify it a bit. So with some sturdy cutters, we can cut that piece off there, and now we want to use this loop on this side. Right, so I'm going to cut so much of this off as well, so let me get it in the right place. so I don't overdo it. I think I want about that much. Right, we got now a little hook, so that's going to help with the casting. Right, as I said, we put this loop on earlier, and that's going to take the weight of the bait. This is an old trick, there's different versions of this, but anyhow, this is going to loop on to the line. Right, so that is now going to take the weight of the fish. Now, as you can see, the trace has gone loose now, and there's no pull on the hook. It's all nice and free. So when you cast, you're just casting the bait. But when the bait makes contact with the water, and it lumps down, this little piece comes free. And everything's nice and free. Hooks are just lying there nicely on the bottom. Not embedded in the bait, it's all nice and free and handy. So there we have it. A little loop on there for casting. That's as simple as that. Hits the water, it comes away. And then your line is direct. And you just tighten up gently, however you want to use, wherever you want to use. Weights, I do a lot of free lining because I always fish near the margins. I don't cast a long way, but if you do, you're straight to your hooks.